YouTube title.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Don't worry about it then. Andrew, how do you say your name? Vanderhay?
Vanderhigh.
Vanderhigh. Okay.
Vander High.
And Andrew, do you have a site or something that you do prospect stuff for?
I do not know.
Okay, I was just curious. I was gonna say from wherever if you did, but
Just from the ether.
gotcha,
There's
gotcha.
no fancy stuff yet.
Just an expert.
Yeah.
All right, well, sounds good.
All right. Let's do it.
All right.
All right.
Welcome in everyone to the Batflip podcast. I am David. I am joined today by Matt. Unfortunately, well, or fortunately, it's Damien's birthday. So happy birthday to Damien, and we're hoping he's having a good day, but he is off of Batflip podcast duty for this week. Joining us instead will be Andrew Vanderhigh of the Cubs Discord over there that I'm a part of. I kind of threw it out there and offered it for some folks to um, come and do a little mock draft with us because the MLB draft is next Sunday. Exciting time for the draftees. We had Greg from Ivy Futures join us a couple of weeks ago to talk about these players, a lot of these players, as they played through the College World Series, which was won by Tennessee. An exciting little couple of weeks of baseball there. But for now, we'll fire it up with our guest Andrew. Andrew, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Matt, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Excited to go through the draft with y'all. It'll be fun. It's coming up. The All-Star games next week. There's been some, I guess, a little bit of drama with who got in the All-Star game, but not too bad this year. But yeah, a lot of stuff coming up, and excited to go through the draft with y'all. And I guess the way this will work is that David is going to be drafting first, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So David is going to be drafting first, and Andrew is going to be drafting second, and they're just going to alternate. And I'm going to kind of host and go through and maybe give a couple thoughts on a pick or two in there as well, just to maybe give them a grade. We'll see who's better. But I have my money on Andrew. But but yeah, if y'all have any thoughts before we get started, go ahead.
So let me lead off by breaking down what you're going to be seeing on your screen here. If you're joining us on YouTube, we've got the draft order. Far left of the screen here, you'll see all of our teams and in the order that they will be picking next Sunday. You also see the slot value for each pick. Now, the MLB draft is a little bit different than the NBA draft, which was a couple weeks ago, NHL draft, NFL draft that was a couple months ago. Baseball drafts are a lot more like a puzzle. And this is something that I had to learn over a number of years of watching my team draft very poorly, or not figure out how to draft, or draft really well in the first round and not well after that. Um, the you get a bonus pool. The bonus pool is indicative of how much money that the team is going to have, and you get more money the higher you pick. So the Guardians have the highest bonus pool in this draft. The Reds have the second highest, and so on. The slot values where each pick is, those are kind of the indicators of how that pick is supposed to go. If the player, gets that money, he gets picked third. He's going to owe $9 million from the Rockies, and the Rockies could cut a deal to pay a player less. So as we go through this draft, you'll see us noting whether or not a player is reaching the slot value. That means that in that first round, a team might have gone for an underslot pick, and from what we've seen, the Guardians might just be doing that next Sunday to try and have a better draft and sign other picks in the second round, third round, etc., for above slot. Kind of famous examples of this was recently the Cubs drafted Cade Horton. He was a underslot pick at 7 in 2022. The Cubs then went and drafted Jackson Ferris, who was supposed to go in the first round, but he fell out because teams didn't want to sign him. The Cubs drafted him above slot in the second round. That's how this is going to go. We will note whether we think the team is going to sign that guy to slot, underslot, overslot, and we'll kind of grade it against the mock draft next week, or the real draft next week, and see how it goes. So, Vandy, anything to add on that? I don't know if I explained that well or not.
No, yeah, that's about it. I mean, we'll see. I'm sure that we're gonna have some shockers here. We didn't really discuss how we felt about the players, so
Yep.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and one other thing to add on top of that is some teams have more picks than others with the competitive balance picks and the different compensation picks you can get. So some teams have a much larger bonus pool than others, even if they're picking I guess the Orioles have a pick for Gunnar Henderson, right? Being the rookie of the year. Yeah, so the Orioles have basically a second first round pick. So even though they've got a $3.8 million slot value and their pick is going to be in that same range on every, compared to the other teams on every round, they have that additional pick. So they have a lot more money to spend than other teams in that same area. So they might be a team that could go over slot in the first round and not be destroyed by it. So that's just another little thing to keep in mind there with the bonus pools. But I guess without further ado, we can go ahead and start with David picking for the Guardians, who currently are in first place and are absolutely on fire and looking like they have the best record in the American League, I believe. Maybe the Orioles are better still. But David, who you got for the Cleveland Guardians?
I'm gonna. So I think, what I've been seeing is the Guardians are kind of down to two guys, right? And I'm already gonna pick on the slot pool here, and that note that the Guardians typically like to go under slot. They usually try to save money in the first round, pick somebody they know they can develop. They know that they've got the skill, that's got the skills for wherever they're picking. But usually they're picking in the 20s, so that's not very much of a big gap from 20 to 40. These big picks up at the front, they're super valuable. But I think the Guardians are going to employ that same strategy here, this week, and they may only save like $1 million doing this, but I'm going to stick JJ Weatherhold on the Guardians. I think they want that middle infielder between he and Bazana, but the potential for Weatherholt to stick at shortstop, and the similarity of their bat with the additional injury risk that Weatherholt poses leads me to believe that it's going to be JJ Weatherholt at a nice underslot, $8.5 million type of value deal that the Guardians can then use to deploy with those high second and third round picks for maybe high schoolers that they can, pay a lot of extra for and go way over slot for. So I'm going JJ Weatherholt under slot.
Yeah, I like that pick. With one of the things that we could look at is kind of most of the time in the MLB draft, probably something we didn't mention was the lack of, drafting for need on the big league roster, because a lot of these players are really far away. But occasionally you do see some drafting, maybe avoiding a draft pick because of, like a fast mover like Weatherholt, that's a veteran college bat. Maybe if they're blocked or something. But of course, the Guardians have a pretty big need at shortstop right now, and I like that pick for them. It'll give them a good need. It's a high upside guy. I think that's a good pick for number one, and they save some money.
Yeah, I mean the narratives are certainly always kind of crazy once we get into this final week before the draft. I've heard some crazy stuff, like maybe Burns is potentially the pick there, way under slot. I mean, Condon is still kind of around, but maybe his price is too expensive for the Guardians.
Which is
But
crazy
yeah,
because they have the most money, right? Like they're
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. If you're hearing that, that's what tells me that they're going to go under slot, and hopefully, that's what kind of makes this very wild. We do have the MLB.com pipeline big board over here on the right of your screen on YouTube. So if you're wondering what order this is in, Bazana is the first pick, Condon second, in terms of MLB's ranking. So you might have a different ranking, others might have a different ranking, but for now we're just going to use the MLB pipeline one. And Travis Bazana, the number one like overall player talent, I think right now. JJ Weatherholt, the number one pick. So yeah.
Yep. So David goes with JJ Weatherholt number 1, and that will bring us to the number 2 pick for Andrew, who is picking for the Reds, who have a number 2 pick after also being an above 500 team last year. So the new lottery is definitely definitely having an effect here. But Andrew, who is your number 2 overall pick for the Reds?
All right. Let's talk about Charlie Condon and Jack Caglione for a minute, because there's Santonian or Judgian power from both of them. Right-hander, left-hander, the classic debate of which is more valuable to MLB teams. When I was looking at the Reds, their drafting is very interesting in the first round because there isn't really a pattern. McLean was way over slot in 2021. Collier was over slot in 22. And then in 23,
it was Louder.
Louder was under slot.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting just kind of looking at how they operate. Obviously, their prospect pool is pretty gross. But when it comes down to Condon or Caglione, I think Caglione is better. And it feels weird to say that because of how good Condon was this year. But I just think you probably can get him for a little cheaper too. Not by much, but Caglione just really stands out to me. And there's not as many questions with their swings. I think some people are a little concerned that maybe Condit's levers are a little long, and there might be some issues against breaking balls in the future. But I mean, he's going to go very shortly here anyways. So, I mean, you can only slight the guy so much after just tearing the world on fire. So,
yeah, that's an interesting pick. I like that. The one thing to note, I mentioned the drafting for need thing that doesn't ever happen. They do have a pretty big logjam of young players in the corner infield for the Reds, with Marte, who is suspended, but he'll be back. Spencer Steer, or both corner outfield and corner infield. Spencer Steer, CES. They've got some guys there. So, Jack Caglione has a little bit more versatility, and also if he doesn't work out, and he's got the highest upside here. So if he doesn't work out, you might be able to even try him as a pitcher because he's got the talent to do that too. So I really like that pick for the Reds. But moving forward to the team that we definitely won't be able to predict because they're an unpredictable team. This is going to be the Colorado Rockies, who are the first bad team to draft at number 3. But the Rockies will get this one. And David, who are you going for with the Rockies?
So the Rockies are the one that I don't know what they're going to do. I genuinely don't. I think the Reds are like, the world is the Reds' oyster at this point. They could get any of the players in the draft. I think be really happy. I think Jack's a good pick. I would take Jack first overall if I was running a Major League Baseball team. I'm not doing this as if I'm running a Major League Baseball team. I am doing this as what if I am the Rockies, because I know what I know about the Rockies. What I know about the Rockies is they don't know anything. And with that, knowledge,
God, are you going way off the board?
I think with that, the Rockies are going to look at the mock drafts and say, why is the number one talented player on the board? And they're going to go sign Travis Bazzana for overslot. So
Oh,
I think the Rockies go chalk because they are not understanding what's happening in front of them. And Jack was probably their pick. So if Jack goes to the Reds, they're going to take Bazzana because he's the best player and potentially have some struggles signing him. I would wager that ends up being a difficult conversation down the road. But yeah, I've got the Rockies getting Bazzana. The hit tool in Coors should just go nuts.
Yeah.
I think that
Oh,
would be
yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, I was gonna say I really like that, David. Bazan is a guy that, or the Rockies, believe it or not, their offense is not very good. I mean, they're usually known for
Yeah.
being really bad with the pitching, but their offense just does not have a ton of talent. And just upgrading, getting a high upside bat that'll be there pretty quick. I mean that should be a pretty good upgrade for them. Brendan Rodgers has struggled with all the injuries and hadn't really panned out, so bring in Travis Bazzana and see what you can do with him. But definitely a good pick there. So moving on to number 4, a team that is more predictable than the Rockies because they're probably going to make whatever saves the most money is what they're going to do. So we're gonna pick for the Oakland, soon to be Sacramento, soon to be Las Vegas Athletics, and this will be Andrew's pick. So Andrew, who do you have for John Fisher's bunch?
well, this is awesome because I was just kind of planning on Bazzana being there. So I, I mean, they've gone at slot a little bit. Like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a under slot no matter what. And 4 is kind of a weird pick because you don't really want to miss out on a crazy good prospect. I don't get the sense they're taking pitcher. I feel like that's just kind of against what they do in the first round.
Yeah.
Would Condon sign with them though?
That's
Like,
a great question.
I feel so bad for anybody that gets picked by Oakland just
Yeah.
because, like, and if he's going to be the most expensive guy in the class, I really doubt Oakland would do it. So, I mean, this is how the board's kind of fallen here already with the first 3 picks. I'm going to go Montgomery.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
That is something that I had seen, was that Oakland was going to go in there and try to get Braden Montgomery out of Texas A&M coming off that leg injury. Was that overslot or underslot, Andrew?
That's probably right at slot. I would imagine he's fine with the injury. It didn't sound too serious, even though it was nasty. Your ankle is not supposed to be facing that direction. But yeah, I mean, I really like Montgomery. I think he's going to be a really good player. I mean, the power's just taking the step every year, and he just gets better and better. He's definitely better from the left side, and I would say his approach is more hit than power. But now he's tapping into the power, which makes him a really interesting player. Right field only, or maybe center field, but I'd say right field will be his future. He was a two-way guy, so I mean that's so interesting now. I feel like everybody's kind of looking potentially for the next Ohtani-esque player. And then my last little thing.
And you just sent the one to Cincinnati.
Yeah. Yeah. That would whoever Cincinnati picks is going to be unfortunate for us. But last thing on Montgomery, he hit in the Cape. He killed it in the Cape.
Yeah.
I value that a ton. And I feel like this is a slam dunk, even if it's not, Condon or one of the pitchers.
Yeah, that's a very interesting pick. I like Braden Montgomery a lot. I was kind of curious with the A's if they might try to go high school because of their timeline for moving to Vegas. It could be a tough sell and to get a kid that might be up in a year or two. But if you get somebody that you're going to develop for 4 or 5 years before the big leagues, then you might be looking at like that would bring them up around the time they move. So I was kind of curious if they take that into account at all. But I would not be surprised for Braden Montgomery. And I tell you that it's fun because he was originally at Stanford, so in
Yeah.
the Bay Area, and that would be interesting if he has some ties there from his time there, and if he's got some kind of like personal deal with the A's too. So
I mean, he'd be there for what, 6 months?
well,
Yeah.
well, he's there. Yeah.
No. Oakland's
Oh,
leaving,
you're
not
talking,
him.
Well, I'm talking about like the Oakland
Yeah.
A's like situation, how that might affect what he believes like being there and stuff, like how he views that. So, but yeah, definitely interesting there with the A's, and now to a team that is worse than the A's in 2024 at least, and that is going to be the dreadful Chicago White Sox, who are going to get a pick from David. So, David, what are the White Sox going to do, and who's going to come to Birmingham for me to watch them with the Barons?
If the board falls like this, which I would say there's definitely a reasonable possibility it does. Like 3/4 of me is saying the White Sox sprint to the podium with Condon's name. 3/4 of me is saying it. There's this little hitch though that's like the White Sox are weird and it's going to be really tough for them specifically to sign Condon. I think the A's would be the only team worse off trying to sign Condon than the White Sox. So I'm sitting here going, Chase Burns probably makes sense. The way the White Sox develop pitching, they're probably just going to stack into their strengths and try to continue building the farm system via the good pitcher that they trade away for those prospects, the prospective young players. I think they go Chase Burns here.
Wow.
Which is, maybe I'm wrong, but my thought is that, the White Sox are building really good starting pitching right now. They're developing it so well that I think they stick with that strength and hope that Chase Burns is another Garrett Crochet that they can, get 2 years out of and maximize a huge trade return for. They've also been good with drafting high schoolers. They drafted Colson Montgomery, who's developed pretty well. He's struggling a little bit in AAA right now, but he's very young still. So, I think this is how it'll go. I think the White Sox have their eye on Burns now, and Condon being surprisingly available. That doesn't really change their philosophy because they're hoping for a starting pitcher here.
Yeah, that's an interesting one too. I was a little surprised you didn't pick Hagen Smith, given their lineage of Chris Sale, Garrett Crochet, Carlos Rodon, lefties with the wipeout slider. But yeah, Chase Burns is a great prospect too, and I'm with you on the White Sox developing pitching. I think they're very underrated at that.
Yeah.
Although I don't think they're great at anything really, but I think like if there's an aspect that they're better than people give them credit for, it's developing pitching. I mean, you look at Dylan Cease. Really, I know he came over from the Cubs as a prospect, but he really kind of took that next step with the White Sox. Rodon, Lance Lynn rebounded his career with, I guess that was with the Rangers, and then came over. But Garrett Crochet being the latest example, so they've done a pretty good job with that. But we'll move on next to the Kansas City Royals, another team picking in the top 5, top 10 that is having a very good season. I know they've cooled off of some, lately, but the Royals are in a very good spot. Their farm system's a little bit weak, though. So while their major league team is young and doing pretty well, Andrew, how are they going to bolster their farm system here with the 6th pick in the draft?
Well, Charlie Condon's on the board.
Yeah.
Which, oh man, I had Hagen Smith locked in, like almost no matter what. But I mean, either way, man, I feel so good about Hagen Smith to Kansas. I think they love him.
Yeah,
he does all the weird, funky like stuff that they like. Oh man. I feel really dumb if I don't pick Charlie Condon, though. I think it has to be him. I mean, falling all the way to 6 is like... That's one of those things where it seems pretty unfathomable before. And then when it happens, you're like, okay, yeah, I guess it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, what a steal.
Yeah.
I mean, putting him in that lineup that's already got a lot of young players there and coming up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's a perfect guy to build the lineup around.
I actually really like that fit. I think Kansas City would be very grateful if it goes this way. And yeah, I think you're right. I think their board is probably Condon 1, Hagen Smith 2. Like overall, like not in general. I think they're probably huge on Hagen Smith, but Condon's going to be difficult to pass up. And Kansas City is a team willing to go over slot. They're also a team that likes to sign those weird deals. I would not have been shocked if you had gone started grabbing one of those guys from down in the teens and slid them up into Kansas City's board here.
Yeah, no, they're definitely a little bipolar with their picks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like it too. I think Condon is a guy that I think Kansas City just needs more upside. I think they got a lot
Yeah.
of solid players, but they just need a little bit more upside, and he gives them
Yeah.
that. So, picking at number 7, it's going to be another team that's having a pretty good year so far. It's going to be David's favorite pick of this draft, and that's going to be the St. Louis Cardinals, who are going to whoever he picks is going to torment David's team for
they
the
are.
foreseeable future. So.
It's funny because I've had this specific pick on my board since like March, and it's worked out here. So I think it's going to work here. I got Hagen Smith to the Cardinals. I've had it for forever because originally, the Cubs have a lot of ties to Arkansas, and Hagen Smith was getting mocked to the Cubs, and then he went out and had just an amazing year where he was SP1 or SP2 in college. I've got the Cardinals grabbing Hagen Smith, saying thank you, and to the Royals for passing on him and moving on happily, and him being just a dominant pitcher that shuts down the NL Central because that's what happens. So, I'm going Hagen Smith to the Cardinals, and they sprint to the podium with that pick. I was honestly thinking that one of those big sluggers like Condon would make it to the Cardinals, in which case I would have slammed that home as well. But yeah, I mean, they're going to be happy with Hagen Smith too.
Yeah, that's I think that's a perfect fit. The Cardinals badly need some upside in their pitching staff and some young pitching. They don't really have a ton, because especially in the left-handed, facet, some of their lefties have kind of not developed extremely well recently. So looking at you, Matthew Liberatore. But yeah, the Cardinals definitely could use that an high upside pitcher. So moving on to number 8, a team that really likes to draft college pitchers or first basemen who don't hit for power. That's going to be the team that probably is in the second or third worst situation in the big leagues right now. Their farm system stinks, and their major league team stinks, and that is the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, of Orange County, of whatever Art Marino wants to call them. So Andrew, it looks like you get to pick for the Angels and probably do a better job picking for them than they'll do.
No, did you say they were really bad and poorly ran already? Did you state that?
Yeah.
Or did I miss that?
No.
I think we covered it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So when I think about the Angels, it's really hard to figure out why they're the way they are in the draft. A part of me kind of wants to think that they drafted all these guys that they push up to the major leagues right away because they had Ohtani, and they kind of felt like they needed to perform now because they knew they weren't going to keep him. But I am not going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm just going to assume they like debuting their draft picks immediately into the MLB. And who better? James Tibbs III.
Wow.
Probably the most popular. It's between him and Moore, but the most popular underslot picks for teams. I question if he sticks in the outfield. Like, he might be a first baseman, which kind of complicates things a little with Schwannel. But he's got kind of a weird swing with his back foot, but he hits for power. And I think you just got to kind of trust that he can maintain that. It's not a flashy pick like most of the Angels picks, but it makes sense. They like to save money. So, it's fine. I wouldn't say it's a bad pick, but I mean, it just continues that trend of kind of whatever first round picks for them.
Yeah, That's interesting, and I am curious, like you are, about if the Angels take a different direction now that Otani's gone. But I have a feeling that based on the way this past offseason went, I have a feeling that Artem Moreno is just going to tell him, you know, get guys that'll be here quick. We need to
Yep.
compete, contend, and I don't think that that's going to work very well for him. But I think that James Tibbs would be along those lines. So I'm
Right.
with you on that one. But moving on to number 9, the team that had the number 1 pick last year, and he is already an all-star. So the Pirates having recent. Having some recent success in the draft, although I don't think they're going to be able to pick another Paul Skeens at number 9 this year. But
No.
that's going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates. And David, you get to pick for another division rival of your team.
I know I got the White Sox, Cardinals, and Pirates all in a row. How about that? I think from what I've seen, the Pirates are looking longer term because they've got major league talent right now, and if they were to get some of those college guys that are going to zoom up super quickly, they might run into some crowding. My wager is that given a top 10 pick here, they want to kind of keep the pipeline flowing as Skeens ages and have a guy who will be there in 3 or 4 years. So I think the Pirates are going high school here. Connor Griffin's the best high school player. Think they grab him. I don't really know the difference between the high school shortstops here between Griffin and Rayner. From what I understand, I think Griffin's more of a power guy. Rayner's more of a glove contact guy. I could be wrong about that, but I'm going to give him Connor Griffin. I think this is where we see our first, high schooler go. And I think he gets right about slot. Pirates kind of try to reload and keep the pipeline flowing as Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, O'Neill Cruz, all their young guys kind of age through arbitration. So, I think that's the first high schooler off the board. Pirates at 9.
Well, maybe we can talk about both the top 2 high school shortstops, because with the Nationals pick, I'm taking Bryce Rayner.
Nice.
And yeah, both these guys are kind of interesting. They're different stylistically. I know Griffin has some questions about his swing. It's a little herky jerky and kind of like he swings out of his shoes a lot, which is kind of an interesting thing to me. It sounds like he's pretty athletic. He had 87 stolen bases this season. Maybe some center field if shortstop doesn't work out. And then Rayner, Harvard Westlake, continuing to build the lineage of just elite players from that school. He gets a lot of Seager comps. He's a lefty and he's 6'3", so that's kind of the standard for guys like that. But really good shortstop, definitely a shortstop. Maybe he grows out of it and he moves to third, but he's still plus defender projection long term there. But yeah, I mean, I think both these guys, not the Jackson Holidays of the world, but I think they're really talented players, and the ceilings are pretty substantial for both of them.
Yeah, I like both of those picks. I think they're, both these teams are in a position to take more upside in high school ranks. They've got young, talented farm systems coming up, and both of those guys seem to be, right in the proper line to get move forward with those systems. So moving on to number 11, we're going to have David pick number 11, and he's going to pick the Detroit Tigers, who are in a really interesting position. They have what appears to be a semi-failed rebuild, but they're a little bit better than they have been this year. So it's going to be very interesting to see where they go from here. But David, who do you have for the Detroit Tigers?
This is easily the most confused I've been so far. Christian Moore's got a lot of top 10 helium, and I was thinking he would be the Angels pick, and then this is where Tibbs would go. But I don't think the Tigers take Christian Moore if available, because Moore is kind of that hyped second baseman right now, but they just signed Colt Keith to the extension. Did the Tigers? So I'm thinking high school pitching, maybe, or maybe Trey Savage. Maybe this is where Trey Savage gets popped. I don't think they take Nick Kurtz. Think they still want Torkelson to be the guy. I will tell you, as a Cubs fan, I'm loving Nick Kurtz falling here, but it just seems like that's how this is going to go. We've seen a lot of Kurtz's falling, and guys like Tibbs, Christian Moore are on the rise. I'm going to go Trey Savage for the Tigers. I think they want a starting pitcher or James Tibbs. I think that's where they're going to be, and they're kind of hoping that one of those two big dominant starting pitchers falls down the board. If you insert Nick Kurtz in for Cardinals, I don't know that it goes very much differently, and they end up with Hagen Smith there at 11. The Tigers do. So I think the Tigers have been talking to these starting pitchers, and my wager is that they'll go Trey Savage if James Tibbs is taken, because I think their guy might be James Tibbs.
It'll be interesting. Tigers with who have been doing a very good job with pitching recently.
Yeah.
Getting another really good high upside pitcher. Moving on to number 12, Andrew, the Red Sox, who have one of the best farm systems in baseball. All of a sudden, they're picking number 12. They have a pretty good team so far this year. So, where are you going with the Red Sox here?
Well, David, you stole my bet. I was going to make Greg Zumach eat his heart out and not have the Cubs get Trey Savage with Boston. But you jumped the gun there on me. You sniped me. So, yeah, this is kind of one of those ones. I feel like it's either Moore or Kurtz. Kurtz falling is really interesting because I guess he's the most underrated guy in the draft. Like, the power there is just ridiculous. And I think the fielding's going to be fine. I mean, he's just a really talented player to me. Christian Moore, though, I mean, talking about helium, I mean, just stole the show at the College World Series. I mean, what else can you really say about the guy? He just hits the cycle. I mean, he just every moment you could have, he had hit the leadoff home run in the national championship game. I mean, the guy's got helium, and he's not going to be expensive. So I think it's a slam dunk for them to just take more.
I will say that we got one of our guys in the Cubs Discord down on the farm popped into the chat. Hi. He noted that Seaver King's got a little helium with the Red Sox as well. That's the Wake Forest center fielder. That wouldn't shock me, though. The Red Sox doing something weird with Craig Breslow at the helm would not shock me here.
And I was thinking about this last night, actually. Seaver King really reminds me of Christian Campbell, who was their 4th round pick last year. One of the later mid picks for them. But that same kind of skill set, utility guy, really athletic, maybe a little power potential in the bat that can be unlocked. He only had one season in D1, right, at Wake this year.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it, but I'm still going Christian Moore.
Sticking Christian Moore, I like it. Under Slaughter. I'm assuming Christian Moore's still under slot. It seems like he's popular.
Yeah,
on that.
it's kind of close, I guess, right?
Yeah, it might be slot at this point, but we'll stick under slot there.
Yeah, that's fine. That's the narrative.
Slot, yeah, Christian Moore's a really solid pick there for the Red Sox. But moving on to the San Francisco Giants, who are kind of in a interesting position right now as well. They're kind of a middle of the pack team right now with a middle of the pack farm system. So David, who are you going to go with for the San Francisco Giants?
I'm gonna break my own heart. I'm going to break my own heart, and I'm going to take Nick Kurtz.
That's exactly what I was thinking too.
And we're doing it on purpose. We're working on that. We've already reverse jinx Mac Chapman into a good, successful run. We're going to reverse jinx Nick Kurtz either into the top 10 where I won't be heartbroken, or to the Cubs at 14. Yeah. I mean, the Nick Kurtz falling this far is ridiculous. He's easily a top 5 talent in this draft. The problem is the position, right? First base. Yep. Not a very popular pick in those early picks because you can always move an outfielder to first base. You can always move a third baseman to first base. So, you can always move a shortstop to first base. These guys end up at first base. It's not that you're drafting first base specifically. So while I think I would love for a team picking at 14, 15, et cetera, to get Nick Kurtz, eventually somebody's going to take him, right? A guy with this much hitting. I mean, you're seeing Freddie Freeman type comps to this guy. He's real tall. I love Nick Kurtz, but I mean, I'm hoping that that it doesn't happen this way, and that the Giants don't pick for power. But this is an organization that needs an influx of power so bad. Yeah. This is a match made in heaven, unfortunately. And it might go this way, and if it goes this way, I will be heartbroken. But the Giants will have themselves a very, very good first baseman of the future in Nick Kurtz.
Yeah, the Nick Kurtz, his write up on MLB Pipeline in their draft rankings says his upside is Jim Thome with defensive value.
Oh my god!
Which is like, my God, if they could do
Yeah.
that, that would be crazy. But and it's a good pick for the Giants. They need some power, need a high upside bat. Doesn't matter where they play defense.
Yep.
They just need upside. So moving on to number 14, and Andrew has won the Cubs fan, the two
Let's
Cubs
go.
fans in here's pick of the Chicago Cubs at number 14, who are having a, we'll just call it a not great season so far.
They're having a season, one of the seasons of all time. That's what they're having.
They do have a fantastic farm system, though, to
Yes.
add to here. So, Andrew, who is your pick for the Cubs?
So I kind of have a thing with this pick. And the thing is, the system is very full of depth, but we're kind of starting to run into a star problem in the big leagues too. Really, organizationally, we just need star or high-level players. It makes sense to me to keep pounding pitching. I'm going prep. I've fallen in love with Ryan Sloan in about the last week after really looking into him. 6'5", 220. Illinois Gatorade Player of the Year, so he's somewhat local. 3+ pitches, fastball, and he can contort it anyway. Cut, sink, run, ride. Changeup's really advanced. The slider's very good. I mean, putting a guy like that into the Cubs infrastructure when he's already very polished and he has top-end stuff, I mean, I feel like the sky's the limit for a pitcher like that. Cam Caminiti was the other guy I was kind of thinking about. He's a lefty, which the Cubs like. Big stuff. But I just think Sloan makes too much sense with the local connection. The delivery's really easy. His lower half is like very solidly built. Like, it's impressive. And you can kind of tell watching him pitch. That's where he gets a lot of his power from, is his legs. But yeah, this is my draft crush right now, and I'm really happy he made it here.
I think that's going to be a fun one. You sold me on him, and our guys down at the farm said Sloan's different. I mean, the Cubs taking a high upside high school starting pitcher is not the way they've drafted of late, but that might be exactly what they're hoping for, right? The Kantrovitz-led group, they might just go out there and try to do something that we are not expecting, and I think a high school starter would be exactly that.
Yep, I'm with you on that. I think that would be a solid pick, and the Cubs need, like you said, they just need more star power. They've got a bunch of good players. They need a couple of like superstar players to add to them. So looking on to number 15, and this is a very interesting team because they're so lopsided in how their team is structured right now, and that is the Seattle Mariners, who have a like just absolutely elite pitching staff, but really struggle to hit.
Yeah.
So what do we think the Seattle Mariners are going to do? Their farm system is pretty top-heavy with bats. In fact, I think the pipeline rankings, their top 11 prospects are all bats. So do they try to balance that, or do they try to keep swinging at it for the for the big league club?
I'm going to do a fun. Is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Gerangelo Cinche.
Wow.
Yes, let's go.
Gerangelo's ceiling is supposedly around 15. And I'm saying that the Mariners are the smart enough team. You got Jerry DiPoto out there, very creative. That group is very creative, and they want a guy that can invent the hybrid starter reliever role. I'm going with Gerangelo to Seattle. I think that'll be fun. And as a pick, that makes a lot of sense to me. They're going to, I think, go for a starter, and it's whether or not they want to take a risk on some of these, high school arms that we talked about, right? I mean, the Cubs going after and selecting maybe what they think is the best, high school starter here, whether that be Sloan or Caminiti. That does open up, college SP4 to the Mariners, and he would be available pretty quickly. And I think I'm still of the opinion that Durangelo can just go out here and pitch, start right-handed and relieve left-handed, and be a guy in your bullpen that counts in your group of pitchers as a reliever and give you that extra man. If he can do that, I think the Mariners are going to be the team to capitalize on it. So I think they go underslot, grab Durangelo early, and get the notoriety of having the switch pitcher. He's very Mariner in that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I
love it.
Yeah, I was saying that, man, that the Rays would just be heartbroken because that is the
Yep.
most Rays pitcher in the history of pitchers.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, I like it, and I like Durangelo. There's not it's only so often you can take a guy who's that unique, and you have to take a shot on uniqueness like that. You can find plenty of right-handed pitchers, left-handed pitchers, bats in the draft. You can't find many switch pitchers. So that would be a good one for me. So moving on, number 16, another team that is really struggling this year and has a pretty bad farm system, but they do have a new front office who has a little bit more of a progressive look at how they pick prospects. So Andrew, you get the next pick, and you're picking for the Miami Marlins.
I feel like the shoe-in pick, just kind of based on how it's gone, is prep pitcher. But when I say this, I don't mean to be dramatic. I think the Marlins have the worst minor league system I've ever seen.
It's pretty bad.
It's so unimpressive. I mean, you got the prep pitchers at the top, which is like sketchy because you never know. I mean, they just need everything. So, I mean, I think Seaver King kind of fits. I know it's a new people running the show, and Seaver King would kind of fit that aggressive hitter archetype that they've gone for in the past. But I do think there's something to adding a Cam Caminiti to Noble Meyer and Thomas White. I mean, that's a pretty nasty collection of young pitchers. But part of me is just like, take Cam Smith because he's from Florida.
That does track.
I'm gonna go Caminiti though. Wow. I don't think he's gonna fall this far in real life. I think he's very good. And when you have the opportunity to potentially have 3 frontline starting pitchers, if everything goes right, I think you got to take that chance.
Yeah. The Marlins are a perfect example right now of you need to get a bunch of them because you never know when some might get hurt. And with the fact that they've traded away some guys in that rotation, now the rotation's extremely thin when it was a huge strength of them because they had a couple injuries. So definitely just stacking pitching is something that the Marlins would do. And that was kind of something the Rays have done in the past too. And their new front offices come from Tampa. So definitely interesting pick there, and a good one for the Marlins. So moving on, number 17, David gets to pick another division rival of his team. This one is going to be the first place currently Milwaukee Brewers, who going to be an interesting pick here. So David, who are you going to go with for the Milwaukee Brewers?
I just noticed I also get the Dodgers. Man,
lucky guy.
Amazing. I'm going with the self-described baseball rat from one Greg Zumak, and that is Ryan Waldschmidt to the Brewers. That would annoy me because I think Waldschmidt could totally be a Cubs pick here. Underslot, I think that he still goes underslot in the teens. And I think Waldschmidt is going to be darn annoying over the next couple of seasons in a Brewers uniform. I wanted Brock Wilken last year too. Wilken goes to the Brewers, so I don't think they take the third baseman and Cam Smith. I think they go after Ryan Waldschmidt, and man, that's going to be annoying because Waldschmidt's one of those, corner outfielder with a sweet swing kind of guy that complements Sal Frelick and Christian Yelich real nicely. Is just kind of another one of those guys that goes out there, gets on base, really ticks you off. It's such a Brewers pick. It makes a lot of sense.
Pick. It's just the most obvious Brewers pick ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Ryan Waldschmidt out of Kentucky, who I believe made their first College World Series ever this year. So,
jeez.
Wow. Ryan Waldschmidt, big star for that.
So, there we go.
So moving on to the next pick, a team that has almost the most unpredictable drafts you can imagine, and not surprising that that's the case. And Andrew, you are going to pick for the Tampa Bay Rays. So Andrew, who you got there?
So originally, in my little mock draft I have here, just to keep a sense of the board, I had Waldschmidt going to Tampa Bay. So you sniped me twice now, David. Um, with Milwaukee's pick, I had them taking Seaver King because I think he makes a lot of sense for a guy that can make a little adjustment to, and he just totally blows up into a star utility
Mhm.
player. I'm gonna go with Seaver King here.
Yep.
It's a little. I mean, it's hard to say it's not typical for them because they kind of do whatever. They go slot over slot. They'll go under. I think I don't know what they really do, but I mean, yeah, I really like Seaver King. I think he's more of a jack of all trades utility guy where he's not really plus anywhere.
Right.
Um, but I mean, he's got such an interesting story. He was at D2 Wingate and really good player there.
Mhm.
He won the Valley League MVP in 2022, which is like wood bat.
Right.
I believe it's like a wood bat league for that's like not the Cape basically. He played third base a lot this year at Wake. His secondary position was center, and then he played a little short in second base. I don't know. I got a good feeling about him. I think he's. I'm glad you didn't take him with the Brewers pick because I mean I could see him really tweaking a little couple things with the bat and then just taking off.
Yeah, I like that pick. That style of player. I know that hasn't been super typical of their drafts, but that style of player, utility guy, make a quick adjustment to, make a play him to his strengths type thing. That's something the Rays are so good at. So that pick makes a lot of sense. And you never know. I think when the Rays drafted Xavier Isaac, I think he was like not even a top 100 prospect on some
No,
boards, and I mean that's worked out pretty well for him. He's looked awesome. So definitely a good pick there for the Rays. So moving on, the next team is a team who's very mid on the big league level and very mid in the farm system. They're not
Yeah.
horrible on either, but they're not great on either. They do have a lot of money on the books that is coming off the books soon, though. So we'll see what happens there. But that's going to be the Mets at number 19, and this is going to be David's pick.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Honestly, I've had a decent idea about a bunch of them, but I have no idea what the Mets would do here. I'm gonna go with a little bit out of the box type of pick because I think that's kind of Metsy in a way. It's David Sternsian trying to make a pick like David Stearns, right? What would the Brewers do here of the past? And I would think the Brewers go grab just the best funky armed pitcher that they can get, right? Who's the weirdest one left that is still got that kind of high upside? And I'm going to go with Cash Mayfield. I've seen him up pretty high on some of these drafts, and obviously with the prep arm, it's a little funky. That as to whether or not he'd be able to start going down the stretch, but I think he's got the stuff to. I was debating between him or like Brecht, but I think Brecht is just he needs an organization, and he probably is lobbying for an organization that's good at developing pitching. And you know who isn't good at developing pitching is the New York Mets. So so I think the Mets are going to go high school pitcher, try to get to string him along over the longer term and line him up with their rebuild as opposed to a guy that might rush through the system and be a reliever by this time next year. So I'm going to go with Cash Mayfield. You know, I think this is like an underslot pick where the Mets are going to try to stock the system over the course of the draft and try to capitalize on having that mid round pick. But I genuinely don't know where they go here. And if I were to wager the Rays pick, that's where we stop having like big ideas and getting
yeah.
picks right and start kind of losing it here because I don't know what's going to happen when it comes to the Mets.
Yeah, the Mets are interesting, and I think they have struggled a little bit early in the draft at times. And they've also, one note on the Mets, there's been a couple times recently that they have not signed
Yeah.
their first round pick. I know Kumar Rocker they didn't sign. I don't think Brandon Sproat was a first rounder when they didn't sign
I
him.
think he was the second round, or no, he was
Yeah,
a fifth rounder.
he was a
He was
pretty
in
high
there. Yeah.
pick. Yeah, when they didn't sign him either. So of course they eventually signed him the next year. But
I
it
also want to note real quick that the Mets, the Padres, Orioles, or the Padres and Yankees, and maybe even the Braves are all dropped down because of the luxury tax. The Mets are over the luxury tax. This pick should have been ninth. It is
Yep.
19th because of that.
yes, yep. So good job, Steve Cohen. Um, So moving on, Andrew gets the next pick, and we're looking at a team that is in another team in a very interesting position because their big league team seems to be teetering on the edge of needing a rebuild. And I think their farm system's just okay. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's great. But that's going to be the Toronto Blue Jays. So which draft prospect is going to go north of the border, Andrew?
Well, somebody's got to replace Vlad Guerrero Jr. when he gets traded to the Cubs. Um, so when I look at their draft, it's very, it's a lot of prep guys. It's kind of a mix of over and under slot. I don't really like the Blue Jays system. It's a very weird group of prospects to me. And I think when you're kind of operating under potentially the last draft for this group of people running the Blue Jays, I'm just going to take the best player available, Cam Smith.
Yep.
This is the guy I had coming in for that pick, so I feel pretty good about it. Just giant human being. I mean, already physically maxed out. Probably one of the more impressive physiques in the league immediately. Really good third baseman. Maybe is going to have to move to a corner outfield spot. We'll see. I think he's going to move quick. He his freshman year at Florida State, it was fine, but this past season he just really took off, and I think he's a really impressive player. I mean, the plus power because the maxed out physique is already there. And he's just adapted a lot in his career so far, and I don't think that stops once he gets to the minor leagues. And I think it could be a guy who's up in like 2026. I don't think that's impossible. But yeah, I think that's a slam dunk pick for
Yeah.
a really interesting team and an interesting time.
Yeah, I like the pick. I think you look at the Blue Jays and they don't really have a ton of option or long-term answers at all on their team. And at third base has kind of been a hole for them this year since Matt Chapman went to the Giants. So a guy that might move a little bit quickly and can maybe fill a long-term need somewhere here in just a couple of years. And Cam Smith, who I think it's a little bit higher on most prospect rankings, so it could be a little bit of a steal for them. Number 20. So going on to number 21, David, you get to pick for the Minnesota Twins, who are having a pretty good season. They seem to be in a pretty good spot to make the postseason in 2024. Pretty good farm system as well. They've done a good job drafting and developing over the last few years. So, David, who are the Twins going to pick?
I had to go look because I wasn't sure, but I was pretty sure that the Twins don't have a single good prospect at catcher, and they do not. Their top prospect at catcher is like 24th ranked, and he's in Double A, and he can't hit. So I'm going to give him Malcolm Moore, the catcher from Stanford. He's got a lot of that that pre-draft helium where he might go higher than this, and we might be wrong, but I think the Twins kind of can draft for need right now, right? They can look at their system and say, we've got a lot of really good starting pitchers and relievers at the major league level. We've got a lot of, outfielders. We've got a lot of infielders, but we don't have as any catchers. And Malcolm Moore fits that. He's going to have that fielding capability. Guy from Stanford, very smart. And, I think they can go under slot here, continue to, build on those, with high schoolers here in the second and third round based on that Malcolm Moore pick. But I think he might go higher than this, but first catcher off the board finally. And, Malcolm Moore's kind of interesting. He's got a lot of that early that pre-draft hype where I feel like we should have taken him already, but it just didn't work out that way. So maybe this is where he goes.
I like
Yeah,
that.
that's the catchers are kind of interesting this year. There's like 4 of them that are kind of first roundish guys. I actually don't like Moore that much. Or maybe that's not fair. I like some of the other guys more.
I'm going with
shocked.
that recency. You know,
Oh yeah.
everybody likes more. So
Well, he's got the great interview apparently, so
Right.
that's the key, I guess. I'm shocked you didn't pick a player with significant health concerns. That's usually their MO.
Well, JJ Weatherholt went first overall. So.
Yeah, true.
So that's a good pick, David. I like that. Moving on to the number 22 pick, and that is going to be the Baltimore Orioles, who have probably still the best farm system in baseball, and they have a elite major league roster with tons of young players. So, Andrew, I guess you just pick the best player available because they don't have any needs.
So it's funny you say that. They do probably have, as a Cubs fan, as my only saving grace being that we have a good farm system. I will admit I like the Orioles system a lot. One thing they don't have a lot of high upside in is starting pitcher. And Brody Breck is probably the highest upside pitcher in the draft. I mean, the stuff is just ridiculous. Starter, maybe. Bullpen, probably, if we're being honest. Like, the command is just kind of all over the place. But when you can potentially, I mean, I don't think like a Jacob deGrom-esque outcome is crazy with how explosive his stuff is. He has the build, and it's a little risky, but I think they can afford to take a shot at some really crazy potential at this point in the draft.
You got me back. I was already writing in Brody Brecht in my mind of the Dodgers. So I think, the Orioles taking Brecht. I don't know that they will.
No.
I think they maybe go with a little more reliability, or maybe even like if they're going to go for the upside, they go with the upside that takes longer to get there in a prep pitcher.
Yeah.
But Brecht can go. He can move quickly, and that team needs relief help quickly, right? And I think Brecht moves as a reliever. You probably try to start him, but I don't know if you can. I just don't know if the command's going to be there. But as a reliever, he might be Joan Duran.
Yeah.
So, like that's very good. Yeah.
I was gonna say just Brody Brecht with the Orioles. That type of pitcher seems to be a pretty common pick here in the 20 to 30 range. And you look at some guys in the past few years. You look at like there's different. It's just such a wide variety of how they end up. I mean, you have like the Braves picked Ryan Cusick a couple years ago, and he's like outside the top 30 for the A's now. But then you've got like Gavin Williams, who the Guardians picked in a pretty similar spot, who threw a really good game in the big leagues tonight. So that type of pitcher, it's such a hit or miss type thing, and Orioles swinging for upside is exactly what I was kind of thinking you might go with there. But moving on, number 23, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Who's their next superstar going to be?
The Dodgers are tough because I was gonna go with Brecht because I thought, of course, they'll take him and try to fix him, right? Like try to get him some command. I think the Dodgers are in a position where they can afford to. I think this is almost the place that they've gone to in their latest trades with like the Michael Busch trade, where they went and acquired a couple of high school level starting, prospects for their farm system. I think the Dodgers go prep if Brody Brecht is off the board. I think they're Brody Brecht number one. But if Brody Brecht is off the board, I think they go with a prep player. I'll go with Slade Caldwell. I think they're different. I think their options are pretty, unlimited here. This is a system that is going to continually produce good talent. Slade Caldwell's the best outfielder in the draft. I think he was like top 10 before the season. He's fallen down a little bit, but that's something that the Dodgers like, right? Is someone who's, they know they've seen the skill and they can get it back because it's the Dodgers. My other options here was one of the third basemen, either Amick or Tommy White. Those were my other two, but my guess is that the Dodgers go maybe over slot to take Slade Caldwell out of school and first round it, try to make sure they get a guy that definitely had some helium before the season started and has kind of lost that now. Try to get him on the rebound and moving forward with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I only booed because I'm not. I have questions about what exactly the ceiling looks like for Slade. It's very he's a smaller guy. He's a little slap hittery for me, and I don't know. I don't know if Nick Madrigal kind of broke my brain into just not liking slap hitters anymore. But yeah, I mean, prep for the Dodgers just makes so much sense. They've been connected to Schmidt a lot.
Yeah, he was the other one I was thinking of too. That might be the pick. Honestly, I might have goofed it up trying to be weird.
Yeah, maybe we'll see who I take next year.
Yeah.
Who's going?
So moving on to the next pick is the number 24 pick, and that is my Atlanta Braves, who don't have a ton of needs at the big league level. In fact, the lineup, with the exception of Orlando Arcia, who is a terrible shortstop, is locked up long term. So they've been going pitching recently. You along with that, Andrew, or you thinking differently? Who you got for the Braves?
Well, why stop now? William Schmidt's there,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you might as well just take him. That fits pretty much what they like to do at the top of the draft. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's probably the top ranked right-hander, probably consensus for prep guys. He's got good stuff. I kind of wonder if maybe the delivery's a little scary. He's got a lot of head movement and a lot of effort that's a little questionable. But 3,000 RPM, curve, big fastball, touches 99 with carry and ride. I mean, that sounds like a Braves pick. So
yeah, it does. Sounds like a Dodgers pick too, but I thought the Dodgers were going to get Brody Brecht. He threw me off my game.
Yeah, the Braves and Dodgers typically are picking pretty similarly. Those front offices are pretty closely tied. With Alex Anthopoulos, when he came to Atlanta, he came from the Dodgers group. So
right.
Definitely good pick. I like that a lot. The high upside starting pitchers. That's really where the Braves have a future need. I mean, like I said at the beginning, don't draft for need. But when you have like 8 years worth of locked up at every position, like at that point, you really need pitchers to replenish your system. So pitching is the way to go for me. But moving on to number 25, and David gets the pick for the San Diego Padres, who are also in an interesting spot. They have a pretty good big league team right now, but I think some of that big league team is expensive and starting to get up there in years. So how are they going to replace their aging superstars with some young guys here, David?
Yeah, I think you're asking the wrong questions, Matt. It's not how are they going to replace them. It's who's going to join them, because
they're there
the
for 20
Padres,
years.
the Padres rev up the engine and shoot these guys through the system and out of a cannon, similar to the Angels, but not quite as drastically. I'm giving them Vance Honeycutt, taking the high ceiling of the defensive power center fielder that if he can just get to a little bit of hit, he'll be a superstar. And the Padres are very, very, ceiling oriented, right? So Vance Honeycutt's got the highest ceiling of anybody left, pretty easily. He's kind of lasted at this point. I assume that next week he'll go above this. Where I genuinely don't know, but Honeycutt's got the tools other than the hit tool, and if he can get to some hit tool, he's going to be just an absolute stud. So, the risk is appropriate here. I'll say they'll get him for about slot at this point. I think he's an underslot darling above this, but we've seen a bunch of the underslot darlings kind of be differently than we thought. With Christian Moore going up, at 12 and stuff like that. I think Honeycutt's kind of in the same range as Christian Moore. Maybe they've swapped places since the College World Series. So I'm happy with that pick, because I think Honeycutt, if he gets to that hit tool, he'll be up in a year and a half. He's already ready defensively.
Yeah, I really like Honeycutt. I feel like the Mets are kind of a safe spot for him potentially.
Yeah.
I think he'd make a lot of sense there. You do realize you just broke a 8-year streak of Padres first round prep picks.
It's got to happen sometime.
It does have to happen sometime. But that's one of those trends where Preller just gets set in his ways, and he loves to get those prep guys all hyped up so he can trade them for Garrett Crochet's of the world in 2 years. But yeah, I mean, Honeycutt, the ceiling there is pretty significant, and at this point, I think that's more than a worthy swing to take.
Right.
Yeah. So moving on to the 26th pick, the New York Yankees have the 26th pick. Interesting team. They have some super high end superstars, and they don't have a lot of depth, and they're also pretty old. So, I would assume maybe a quick riser here to kind of help out the big league team. But Andrew, what are you thinking when it comes to the New York Yankees and who they pick?
Yeah, you about nailed it there. Like go Carson Bench. We'll see if he's here when the draft comes around. I know there's maybe some injury stuff going on with him potentially. So maybe a slide is in order for him. But yeah, just one of those guys, a data darling. He just high exit velo, great bat to ball skills, great to good bat speed plus power, good arm. Lefty bat. That seems like a pretty good pick for the Yankees, and I wouldn't be shocked if, depending on maybe some injury stuff, he's up to the show pretty quick.
I will. My one thought is the Yankees are about to lock up a second outfielder for a massive record contract. I don't know that they'll be picking outfield, but
maybe you never know.
You never know, right?
They still need 3, and I don't think they're sold on Verdugo the way he's
That's
played
true.
this year. So, I would, in either way, I mean, they just need upside and someone who can hit because they.
They love Spencer Jones too. They refuse to trade him for some reason.
Yeah. So will be interesting, and of course somebody's got to play center field because I don't think Judge is going to be able to do that a super long time.
No.
So, and I don't know that Spencer Jones is going to be able to stick there either. So, but moving on to the number 27 pick, and this will be David's pick, and we're going to go with the Philadelphia Phillies, who have a middling-ish farm system, not great. They've traded a lot of guys. They've had some bad injury luck with a couple of their pitchers. And they have a very good big league roster. I believe they have the second best record in the big leagues. They might be the best record in the big leagues still. I'm not 100% sure, but they good big league team. They're getting a little bit up there in years with some of their stars. They need to bring in some guys to replenish that. So, David, who are you going to pick for the Philadelphia Phillies?
Yeah, I'm going prep for sure. I don't see why they don't continue the Aiden Miller strategy of drafting a prep shortstop. Worked great, and they need trade pieces, right, to supplant the major league roster. I think that's the kind of the thinking for the Philadelphia Phillies right now. When winning is now, right? They've got the guys, they've got the big contracts, but everybody's locked up, and their best years are the next 2 or 3. They need the guys that are gonna make a splash and trade away. So maybe they move Aiden Miller here at the deadline or next offseason and try to replace him. And I'm gonna go with Kellen Lindsey as my replacement here. I don't know a whole lot about the prep shortstops, but I'm trying to find the best one. I think Kellen Lindsey's got that kind of full package that the Phillies find more out of. I think Aiden Miller kind of fits into this mold as well, where we weren't sure how much power he was going to have coming out, and he went and has hit for power a lot in the minor leagues so far, and now looks like a solid top 30, top 50 prospect. So the Phillies are going to do it again. That's all I'm going to tell you. Is they're going to find a way. It might not be Kellen Lindsey, but it's going to be one of these prep shortstops, and I think they, turn him into something at the major league level relatively shortly.
That would have been my pick too, and I think it's kind of perfect to have Trey Turner already on the team. I think Lindsey's a guy who you attach to Trey Turner's hip and just let him. Just get as much knowledge as possible. Two-way guy. football quarterback. I found his huddle page,
Mm.
and he can move. He's pretty fast. It's pretty impressive to watch. But yeah, I mean, prep is definitely where they're going to go. I mean, it's an open secret, and yeah, Lindsey's a really interesting prospect.
Well, that's a interesting pick for the Phillies, and probably a good pick for them. So, moving on, number 28 is going to be the Houston Astros, who have made the ALCS 8 years in a row. I think 7 years in a row. So the Astros are, they're kind of at the end of their window. They've got some big free agents coming up. Their pitching's been injured a lot this year, but they've kind of been playing a little bit better. But the Astros obviously have been one of the most successful franchises of the last 10 years, and they really need to add some high upside in their farm system. So, Andrew, who are you going with for the Houston Astros?
So when I was researching for this pick, it sounds like prep shortstop and college catcher are kind of what they're looking at. Um, I really like Caleb Lomavita from Cal. I think he kind of gives me Harry Ford vibes. He's really athletic. He's a little raw behind the plate. Um, but there's some real power in the bat, and he's got a swing that really emphasizes launch angle. He's chased a lot. It's kind of one of those very familiar catcher builds where the guy's really athletic, but has a lot of power. He swings and misses. But I'm gonna go with him here just because if it doesn't work out, you could always have a third baseman. And he's one of those players I'd kind of just have a really good feeling about.
Hmm.
Yeah, very interesting pick there. Interesting with Yanier Diaz being such a young,
Yeah.
big leaguer. Interesting to see them, want to take a catcher, but that's a position that's just not. You got to take tons of swings at it because
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
a position that doesn't have a lot of longevity. So, very, very good one there. So moving on, 29th is going to be the Arizona Diamondbacks, who were the World Series loser last year. They won the National League pennant. They still have a pretty good farm system. They've had some graduations over the last year or two that have limited it a tiny bit, but they've picked it. They've picked pretty high in the draft a lot recently. So, who are you going to pick for the Arizona Diamondbacks, David?
I'm sitting here staring at Tommy White and I'm thinking about it, but I have been thinking Billy Amick's going in the first round the whole way, and he hasn't gone yet. I really think Billy Amick's going in the first round, so I guess Tommy White's just going to fall out of the first round because I'm going Billy Amick here. I think the Diamondbacks are looking college. It's just a matter of which college bat they're going to go for. They went Tommy Troy last year. He could play some third, but I'm guessing he's more of a corner outfielder type. So I'm wondering if they want a guy who's going to be more likely to stick on the infield, and I think Amick is closer to that versus Tommy White, who's probably a first baseman or a corner outfielder. So we're into these positional questions, and my estimation is that Amick has done enough after the College World Series where he was really really good to earn himself a first round draft selection. I'm going to stick there over Tommy White. Unfortunately, I think Tommy Tanks has a place, but it's probably not with Arizona.
Yeah, it's an interesting pick as well. Maybe a guy who can move kind of fast. They have a bit of a need at third base. They have for a while. So, um, interesting to see the Diamondbacks pick there. So, moving on, the final pick of the first round is going to be picked by the World Series champion, who are not looking like they're gonna be the World Series champion again this year. Texas Rangers. They've still got a pretty decent farm system, but they've had a decent amount of graduations and traded away a lot of guys, like trading away Cole Reagans for a washed up reliever last year. Who are you going to pick for the Texas Rangers, Andrew?
Kind of similar to the Astros. Catcher has been something I've seen linked here a lot. I would take Walker Yannick, but friend of the Discord, Tim, hit me up and was like, "You need to take Jake Cozart no matter what." I was like, "All right, I guess I'll."
I don't know. You can go whatever you want, but we did add Cozart to the. But he's 42 on the. He's 42 on Pipeline.
Yeah, so I mean, he's just under the. My internet just went out for a second, but I think we're good. Yeah, I mean, it's catcher. It sounds like that's gonna be the pick anyways, but yeah, I don't think you could really go wrong here with any of the other guys available.
Well, there you have it. All 30 first-round picks in the mock draft. I think it went pretty well. Some interesting picks in there. Y'all got any final thoughts on it?
I would be shocked if it goes like this.
Oh,
You
I
know?
was
like, yeah.
I was gonna say I'd be shocked if it didn't exactly go like this.
Yeah.
So no, I mean it should be an interesting draft. There's a lot of weird points in the draft where things could change drastically. And I think it's always fun when there's an element of surprise.
Matt, who would be the lock pick of this group that you would say this is definitely going to happen, like no matter what? The most perfect fit, the most perfect whatever. You know, who's that lock for you and of this group that we drafted?
Well, you know, I don't know if he'll be there, but I think the most perfect pick for a team, matching up a team with a player, is Nick Kurtz for the Giants. You know, they've struggled to replace Brandon Belt and at first base. They've had a little bit of revolving door there, and I think he just fits super well to what the Giants like to do. And I think he's a guy that you could throw in there. You know, I think that the other one I really liked. I know their draft patterns have been a little bit weird, but I really liked Seaver King to the Rays. I could definitely see that one happening, and I think he's a guy that you know, I think that utility guy who maybe just needs to play to his strengths a little bit, maybe a small swing adjustment, that type of thing. That's what the Rays are so good at. So I could see that being a big one. And yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely interesting. I like most of the picks here. So definitely think it was a successful mock draft, and we'll see. I know the Major League Baseball mock drafts typically don't go all that well because there's just so many moving parts in these drafts with the slot values like we talked about. So, but I think y'all did a fantastic job of getting it as good as we can. So, I'm very impressed. But yeah. So I guess that'll wrap us up. If y'all don't have anything else to add.
Nope. Andrew, where can we find you?
You know, just on my Twitter right now. You just my name at Twitter. If you can find an invite link to the 1060 West Discord, that's where I usually am placing most of my thoughts on everything. Chicago sports or movies or whatever you could think of. I'm probably have opinions on it. Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. This was a lot of fun. I'd love to come back on and talk Cubs prospects sometime. That's kind of my specialty, I think. So, but yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, I guess that'll wrap us up for the episode. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. David? Are we recording next week?
We are, but we might be live next week for one of the
right.
All-Star events. So
Cool.
We'll see you next week. You'll see it.